We are back. We are back. Welcome to Let's Chat. I'm Miss Lissha. You know, I got my right hand, and most of the time she is my left, the fabulous.
Hey, Leash. Uh-oh, you just froze, girl. I don't know if you can still hear or see me.
With our last fabulous guest, we had Miss Phyllis Proctor Ewing was on. She talked that talk with us. If you missed that, no worries. Just head over to our archives, either on Blog Talk, not Blog Talk, like it's the radio, over on our YouTube channel, as well as Ebony TV, and on our Facebook page. You can catch us there as well.
Mm-hmm. That was a great show, Leash, because it's like we said last segment, it's much needed across the board. You know, man, woman, and child is something that touches everyone, and especially during these trying times.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it was funny because before you came on earlier, I had posted, because you know, it's so many people that have so many issues with Kamala being the vice president. And the one thing I think is people don't like what they can't control. And I've watched her in some of the Senate hearings, and she makes senators nervous. She makes them nervous. Like, it was one that kind of came for her neck, and when she like postured herself, she leaned forward, she tilted her head. I said, oh, he about to get the business. And then the news camera switched directly to him. Girl, his face was big red. He started to stutter. You can see like he was sweating, like, oh Lord. She went in. Yes, she went in. And so, you know, and we're not saying you have to vote for Biden and Kamala. You don't have to. We're saying you have to vote. And if you choose to not vote, just know that you are choosing not to participate in the laws that are being created and how those laws are going to affect you. I mean, you have to make a choice. I don't care who you vote for. If you want to vote for Trump, vote for Trump. As long as you don't vote for Kanye, because listen, Kanye is not on the ticket. That doesn't do anything to split a vote. We don't have time for that. But we don't have time for distractions, and we don't have time for pettiness. You know, right now is a time in this country that we have to be serious as a people. And we have to make serious decisions and effective and serious moves, and be intentional with the people we are choosing to elect into office.
On all levels, not just in during the presidential elections. There are so many in elections, like we spoke of last week, Lee. You know, you have to get involved with your local law enforcement, your local politicians, because that's where you can even start to make a difference, you know. And get involved, you know, do your census, do your homework, do your research, you know. So you have to be involved in order to want to have that voice be heard.
Absolutely, absolutely. So if you are not voting, that's a vote for Trump. And you're not, you know, being intentional about what's going to be happening in your life. So we're not saying you got to vote for Biden. Listen, there's 3 people on the ticket: Trump, Biden, and the liberal lady. I forgot her name. And so you do have options, but we're saying execute those options, because if you didn't have those options, you would be complaining.
Right. And those are the ones that you hear the loudest, the ones that don't vote. But you have to make a difference. No matter, like Lissha said, no matter who you vote for, just vote. Please.
Absolutely. And you know, when you want things to be different, you have to make different moves. You have to think differently, and you have to make different choices. Everybody is upset with her because she was a prosecutor and she put Black men in jail. Listen, everybody knows that the justice system is a whole trick bag all by itself. And so at some point in time, we as a people, as a community, we have to do better. We have to make better choices.
And you have to look past that. She was more than just a prosecutor. You know, there's so many levels to her. And she knows that going into this position as VP, she's going to have a whole lot different, more responsibility. She's going to be representing a whole lot more people. So you can't just look at her as point one. You know, you have to look at the whole ticket and what.
But she does her job. In any capacity she has been in, she has always done her job. And to me, that's what we need. Somebody that's going to get in there, not be distracted, and handle business, and not allow people to.
You froze again, Leash. But I also want to say, Leash, my boss and I, we were speaking of her yesterday. I don't know if you can still hear me.
Yep, I can hear you now.
Okay. We were speaking of Senator Harris yesterday, and the one thing that we both agreed upon, because he knows everybody and anybody, is that she's tough. She knows what she knows. She does her homework. She's not one to be just not being a leader, and that's what the country needs. We need leadership. And we need people that's going to hold other people accountable. That's my favorite word, accountability.
Absolutely.
But, she's tough. And I think that's a pretty strong ticket right there.
Absolutely. And so I'm excited. First African-American female to, she's not the first to run for office, but she is the first African-American female to run for vice presidency. And that is still an accomplishment. We're waiting for the fabulous Kimberla Lawson Roby, y'all. We love Miss Kimberla. We love when she comes into the chat room. Now listen, Miss Kimberla likes us, and so we have fun. But Miss Kimberla is not for play. She is not for play, and she will not play. But she plays with us. We appreciate her. Yes.
So it's just a great experience when she comes on and shares her time with us, because we all know she is so busy. She has so many things that she's involved in and she's responsible for. So for her to carve out some time for Lissha and I on our show, and check out our archive. She's been on our show a number of times. We so appreciate her. And we love the goodies that she gives to us as well, Lish.
Absolutely. She is always dropping jewels. We have the fabulous Kimberla Lawson Roby, y'all. Now remember, she has fun with us because she loves us and we love her. Hi, Miss Kimberla. How are you?
Hey, how are you?
We are good. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Well, thank you both for having me. It's good to be back on with you again.
Looking fabulous as always.
As always, yes.
It's good to see her this time and not just have you on the radio, Miss.
I know it. This is wonderful. It's like,
yes, we normally have her on the radio. We don't get to see her. So this is really our first time seeing her.
It is. Can you hear us? Can you hear us?
Okay, great. Awesome. Yes. We appreciate you because we know you are busy. You are always working, making those books, working that pen, as I call it. But we want to first say thank you. We want to thank you for your contribution to African American literature. We want to thank you for all the sacrifices you have made. We appreciate you and all the elements that you are in, the way you shine so bright. We thank you so much. For those who are not familiar with your fabulous pen, tell everybody a little bit about yourself and your literary journey.
So I started out writing back in 1995. So, we're talking about quite a few years now, and went by way of working in corporate America. I also worked for the state of Illinois. I worked for the city of Rockford, Illinois. So I did pretty much almost every job that you could think of at that time. And because something always seemed as though it was missing, there always was this void. And I found myself changing jobs all the time, sometimes after a year or two, sometimes after only several months. And so, of course, long story short, as you know, I went back and started just thinking and praying, and then looked back to what my elementary school teachers had even said about my gift for writing, that they believed I had a gift for writing and for storytelling. And then I heard that throughout all of my school years, as well as in college. And so that's sort of how it began. And then, of course, after writing that first book, while still working full time for city government, at the end of that 7 months when I finished completing the book, I went forward and moved forward with submitting to literary agents, hoping to find someone to represent me. Well, I was rejected by all of them. And then I sent the manuscript and in some cases just query letters to editors at the major publishing houses since I couldn't find a literary agent, and I was rejected. And moving on to make another long story short, ended up self-publishing. My husband recommended it. My mom didn't want to see me give up, and things turned out well enough that after a few thousand copies of the book was sold, I went back to agents, found one to represent me. She sold my second book, and then ultimately the first book, and then here we are 28 books later in 2020.
I love it. I love it. And you know, we always talk about a go moment. We've talked about about that moment with you before. You know, a Black woman that can write is a strong woman. When you stepped into the realm of deciding that you were going to make that first step to write, what was that moment like for you when it just kind of came to you and like, this is what I'm going to do?
It was a great moment. And there was also, I would say, a bit of relief because I was always searching. I was always hoping to climb the corporate ladder. And whenever that didn't happen, and in some cases when I knew that I was the most qualified, I was getting the performance reviews that I needed to get and still not moving up. But I also now have looked back on that. I've looked back on it a lot over these last couple of decades and realizing that God was never going to allow me to be promoted because he had a totally different type of promotion. That's just how I choose to look at it.
That's right.
And had I not been passed over for promotions, had I not found the perfect job, I never would have gone back and said, okay, Lord, what is it that I'm really supposed to be doing? And that's how I discovered writing. And that's how I sat down and began doing it.
You know, Miss Kimberla, you've had such a varied journey to get to this point. You know, you had to switch different lanes at different times during your career. And after 28 books and a number of years later, what does literary success look and mean to you?
So to me, it really, first of all, it looks like this, that I am doing something that coincides with my purpose. And yes, I have a passion for writing, and yes, I have a passion for speaking to women and helping women, but to be able to do it and enjoy it on a daily basis, that's what success looks like to me. And it's great. It's great when you can earn a living doing what you love, but none of the money and all of the money in the world wouldn't make a difference if you're getting up every single day doing what I used to do, and that's being miserable and going to a job that you just don't love.
Absolutely. You know, a lot of times, and we talk about this a lot on the show, we're very mindful about how we speak to other people, how we pour into other people, and we tend to give ourselves excuses on why we cannot do what we should be doing. And I'm glad that you spoke on that, because when God tells you to move your feet, you are to move your feet, and we tend to not move our feet at that point in time. So like you said, we end up searching. You keep doing this, keep doing this, keep doing this, and you see that it's not working. Well, it's not working because he told you to do something specific.
And that's exactly right. And so I've been sharing a lot that, you know, when God calls you to do something and he shows you what your purpose is beyond a shadow of a doubt, and you don't move, well, you can either do it voluntarily, and that's the very nice, kind way, or you can do it involuntarily, because what he will do is allow you to become very much uncomfortable and even miserable until you do what he has for you to do.
Absolutely. Now, you recently stepped out, and you wrote a book about your life. Tell us about that process. What was that like for you, stepping back into different things and kind of changing your pen style and moving it to a different direction?
It was very, very different. And, you know, just kind of piggybacking on what we just talked about, the idea of writing 27 novels and then hearing God say, I have this nonfiction book for you to write, and there's a different direction that I want you to go in. That was a tough one for me. And it's one that I really tried to push completely out of my mind. I ignored it for as long as I could, but it had gotten to a point where I was waking up every single day with it. I was thinking about it throughout the day, and then I was going to bed with it. And it just wouldn't go away as much as I wanted it to. And the reason I wanted it to go away was because I wasn't sure that I could write nonfiction, because again, it was not something I had ever done before. So this idea of moving into the unknown and delving into this journey of something that I believe, first of all, I wouldn't be able to do. And if I could do it, I didn't think I could do it well enough to help women the way that I would want to. And so I was really terrified to do it. But what happened was, not only did I lose my desire to write fiction, I even lost my desire to read works of fiction by anyone else. I was drawn to nonfiction, faith-based titles, one after another. I would buy one after another. And, who would have imagined that nonfiction books could become page turners? I always thought, okay, with fiction, you understand that. You get a good story and it's moving along and you love the characters and the plot is great. So of course you call that a page turner. But with anything that is motivational, inspirational, self-help, you don't usually look at it in that respect, but that's what happened to me. So I just have been saying to everyone, when I talk about this journey, how I ended up writing the book was that God gave me what I needed to do, what I was supposed to do, but I just had to trust him in that process. And so when I made the decision to write my last book in that then current contract with my publisher, I submitted that in December 2017. The book came out in July of 2018. I went on the tour for that, took a break for the remainder of the year for the most part, and started writing this book very early last year. And then if God didn't already have that in the plan, as much as I was planning to submit it to my publisher, that's not something that he was pushing me forward to do. And so I ended up going back to what I did with the first book, and I self-published my first nonfiction title. And that whole journey that I was afraid to go on ended up being my most enjoyable one thus far.
Absolutely.
Kimberla, I'm sorry, Lissha. You say you lost a taste of reading fiction books. Now, books, the type of books you read is kind of like the type of food you eat. You love what you love. Yes. And you may not necessarily like another type of food, but you dabble. Now, when you lost that taste of fiction books, was it overnight? Was it gradual? Or how did you approach that? Because, we get so stuck in what we like to read that, nothing else really turns it on. So how was that process for you? How did you handle that?
Well, I noticed it. I didn't know exactly why at first, but I noticed it a good couple of years leading up to that, because I've been in a book club since 1999. So we've been together a lot of years. We choose a book every month. And I would say out of those now 21 years, we may have read 2 nonfiction books. So we read fiction all the time throughout the entire year. But I was finding myself going to more and more book club meetings where I'm there to socialize because I've not read the book. It just was something, we could say, yeah, we're all busy. And there would be other members who would say, oh, I didn't get a chance to read the book because I had this going on. So that's common. That would happen with all of us. But it had become an every month thing for me for the most part. That I wasn't even trying to fit it into my schedule the way that I knew I should. And it was because I just didn't have the desire. Didn't mean that the book wasn't good. It might be a book that had some of the best reviews ever that you're hearing everyone talk about, but that's just not where my passion was. And that's not where my heart was. And I just believe God allowed that to happen so that I would focus on what I was getting ready to do with my own nonfiction title.
Wow.
I love it. Awesome. I love it. Now, we talked a little bit on the business side about the business side of books and publishing throughout the years. But I want to talk just about how you have changed from the time that you picked up your first pen and published your first book to now. How have you grown just as an artist, a publisher?
Looks like we lost you, Lissha.
Lissha, a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I think what she may have been leading up. There she is.
Okay.
I was asking, how have you grown? How have you seen your growth from the first time you published your first book to now?
So I'm certainly learned a lot in terms of writing as a whole, creative writing, as it relates to the craft, character development, and pacing, and the list just sort of goes on and on. Things that, had I had it to do over again, I would have learned a little bit more about that, or maybe a lot more about that before I started. Because what I do think that God had given me from the start was the gift of storytelling. But of course, the idea of writing it, getting it down on paper and doing it a certain way, that's a whole nother ball game. So I definitely have grown over the years with that. And that's thanks to some of the best editors that I've had in the industry at the 3 publishing houses that I've been published with. And so that made a difference. I learned a lot from them. In terms of the business of publishing, because I had to self-publish, I learned every aspect of the business of publishing that I could learn. So I wouldn't do anything differently than that. And then even when I signed with a publisher, I kept that same self-publishing mentality.
That's right.
I still worked just as hard. I still did my part, even though my publisher did what they normally do when they're promoting and advertising and getting the books out to the masses. So that has made the big difference. And so I share with writers all the time. There are 2 things. I get lots of email messages from aspiring writers. And what I have come to realize, I think I've realized, but I've come to accept, is that I can tell and advise and list 10 different things that you need to do. And so many people that I communicate are looking to do it with 1 or 2 steps. They don't believe that, they don't believe they have to have an editor for content and development. They don't believe they have to have a copy editor as the next stage. They don't believe they have to have a proofreader. They don't believe that those should be 3 totally different people. They don't believe their book cover has to look like it's being published by a major publishing house. It needs to be that professional. Or they don't believe they have to worry about the typos. And so, I'm just constantly trying to encourage new writers to do it the right way, because you can have a great story, but if it's not presented in a professional way, then you'll still have readers moving right along past it.
Absolutely. And you are an impact. Your presence is an impact, and your pen is an impact. Why do you think your brand, just Kimberla Lawson Roby, why do you think you've impacted the industry the way you have?
If I have, I guess for one thing, I don't look at myself, I guess, that way, and I've never seen it. And this is what I say. Number one, I've always tried to stay in my own lane from beginning to now. And more than anything else, I have remained true to myself. I'm not focused on what anyone else is doing or not doing. I'm just true to who I am. And sometimes I've written about controversial issues that may have made some people uncomfortable. But if it's in my heart to write that, or I think it needs to be discussed, a certain topic, or talked about a lot more, then I've written it. And so that has made a big difference, because when you begin mimicking someone else because you think, okay, this is what's trending now, this is what's hot, this is what's making money, that's when you'll find yourself on the wrong track very quickly.
It's interesting you'd ask that question, Lissha, because Kimberla, I get my hair done every Saturday. And they always ask me, how's the show going? So I said, we have Kimberla. And before I could even finish saying your name, she was like, she's going to be on your show. They already knew Kimberla Lawson. All I said was Kimberla, and they just got so ecstatic. So
that's kind. That's very kind to hear that.
So branding and being true to your brand is so important, because you never know who's listening, who you're touching. No. It's so important to keep that so only up and up.
And it is. And so there are many times after all these years, early on, I think, I expected it and I was a little shocked about it, but I understood it. But still, after all these years, I will get an email message, or I will do an event with someone and they'll say, wow, you're exactly like I thought you were. The way you present yourself on social media, now I'm talking to you face to face, or I've met you face to face. And unfortunately, they're expecting something different because that's been their experience with maybe somebody else that they've met who is a writer that they have loved. But this is me. Will, my husband, would tell you, the Kim that you get in public is the Kim that you get behind closed doors, and I've tried my best to be that way. And that's just a matter of me being being raised the way that I was. My mom and my grandmother, and they were just real big on treat people the way you want to be treated. If you don't do anything else, just do that. And so they have been deceased, both of them, for years, but they're in my mind and in my heart at all times.
Absolutely. It's so funny.
That way. You've always been that way with Lissha and I, and we so appreciate you for that.
I was just getting ready to say that. We always say Miss Kimberla is awesome, but she is not for play. Show me that. She is not for play.
You always say that.
She isn't. The first time we had her on the show, we do like an excerpt. She was like, "I'm not doing that."
But it's like I'm trying to lighten up a little bit, because I didn't, years ago, and I don't think I've ever shared this with you, but years ago, even before I was writing, I used to have some friends, they would say strictly business. Like that was like the nicknames, like strictly business. Everything is business. And so I'll say sometimes people, I was just saying to this awesome church women's ministry, they are reading my book right now. So I was on with them last Friday, just kind of popped in for a little while. And so they took a shot of the screen. And so I thought, oh my gosh, they were going to share it. And I was like, I look so serious in the photo, but that's because I always look like that, So it's, but no, that's just the way that I guess that I've always been. But, your integrity, and, you can't say that you love and honor God and then treat people badly. I just don't know how you can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because before we had her on the show, I think a year before, the first time we ever had our show, I did a vision board. And you were on my vision board. And that next year, we had you on the show. I want you to talk a little bit about speaking to create and how important that is.
To speaking
to create, because we speak to create.
Yes. So, for me, I think it's always been about, okay, I'll sit down, even when I'm writing, just say a particular story, when I'm writing fiction, I will think about the topic and I'll walk around with that. I'll start to read about that topic. If I know something personally, or I've had my own experiences that will relate to the topic, I'm talking about that as well. I'll talk about it out loud to Will, or I'll talk about it out loud to my brothers or good friends of mine. And so, you definitely, I believe, can speak things into existence. And it's the same way with your creations. So this particular book, my nonfiction book, The Woman God Created You to Be, Will and my brothers and my closest friends, they had to hear about this for about 2 years before I actually started doing it. And so finally Will said, look, if this is what God has called you to do, this is what we're going to do. He's, even though he's not writing a single word, he sees this as, this is us, this is we. And I support you with that. But he's like, at some point you're going to have to actually do it. And so thankfully that finally happened.
Miss Kimberla, you've mentioned the fabulous Mr. Will a number of times here on the show tonight.
Absolutely.
And we know how important and integral he is to you. Yes. But can you share with everyone the importance of having that support and you being able to just fully embrace your journey and the comfort that we see you exhibiting tonight? Can you let us know how important is that for you?
It is. It's extremely important, and not sure that I would even be here sitting right now having this conversation with you. And it's certainly about as many books as I've written had it not been for Will and the support that, he has given me from the very beginning. My mom used to say all the time that you have a great husband, but to have one too who supports what you do, whatever you say you want to do, whatever your dreams are, whatever your goals are, he's behind you 100%. And she used to say, I don't know if you know just how blessed you are to have that. That's not always the case with every single husband in America. Right. And lo and behold, as the years passed, I started to meet women who said, that's not the case. And one woman came up to Will and I at an event, and she was thanking him for supporting me. But then she went on to say that she had this great desire to write. She had written a story that she thought really was something that could be published, but that her husband had actually said to her, why don't you focus on your real job? And she was crushed. Even as she was telling Will and I about it, you could see the heartbreak and just the pain that she was experiencing because of it. But having someone support you, I had my mom supporting me, yet my brothers. My brothers are 6 and 8 years younger than me. And when I was writing, I was 30 years old. So they were in their 20s. And even they would call me after work some evenings, say, hey, just call and just check in, see if you're working on your book, see if you're writing. And so it became a family affair. And all that support absolutely made all the difference for me.
Absolutely, because a lot of people experience what we call backhanded support.
Yeah.
And backhanded support are those people that to your face they say, "Oh, we support you," or in private. But a lot of times they have spoken on your vision or spoken on something, whatever you're doing, in a negative manner, or they really don't believe in it. They're just trying to pacify you and say, "Okay, well, this gonna pass over. It's just something they just doing, and then she'll do whatever I want her to do."
Yeah,
and that's very important because you have to kind of start paying attention. You have to start watching those people around you and know that not everybody around you wants you to succeed. That's why the steps you make must be for you.
Yes, they do. In the new book, I have a chapter called Not Everyone Wishes You Well, because that's what my mom taught me at a very young age. She wanted me to be aware of that and to just accept it. And so I outlined what happened when I first started talking about this whole idea that I'm writing a book. And I said it to a couple of people that I thought would really be supportive and encouraging. And they almost looked at me like, wow, that's nice. And they moved on to another conversation, or even looking as though or sounding as though, this is like a little temporary thing, that's nice, you're working on it, but that'll pass, basically. And so I experienced that. And I experienced that with people that I had known for a very, very long time. And what I had to do was stop talking about it, except to the people who I knew were saying, you got to keep going with this. You got to finish this. And so the next thing most people knew, the book was finished. I was ready to self-publish it. My book jacket was ready to go. I had a date for the release. There were a number of people that did not know anything until right when the book was ready to be published.
Absolutely. We talk about that.
I kept saying it to the wrong people. They were going to talk me right out of it. I could see where that was.
Absolutely. And we call that making bold steps in the dark. It's very important that you don't have to advertise at all. Sometimes it's just whenever it happens, that's their advertisement. And then they say, well, you didn't tell me. I didn't have to tell you.
No. Sometimes it's best. When they talk about moving in silence, sometimes it's best to do that. Yeah.
It is. And sometimes that's when
Kimberla, tell us what is next. What is next for your brand? What is next for your pen?
So I am, because of the pandemic, our unfortunate pandemic, that changed everything, because I had speaking engagements that were confirmed that I was preparing to travel around the country for. And of course, since the month of March, all of that's changed. So many of my events I've been able to do virtually. So that's been a blessing. But I just want to take the rest of this year to really focus on the woman God created you to be, to really get that out to women a little bit more than I have thus far this year. And then we'll see, so not saying that I will never, ever write fiction again, because surely if God gives me that desire to do that, I will. So I'm not sure if it'll be that or if it will be another nonfiction book, but I won't actually think about that until the beginning of 2021.
Absolutely. And we see you guys. Thank you guys for all of those that are sharing the live. If you got questions, post them in the chat box, and then we'll be glad to share them with Miss Kimberla. Now, Miss Kimberla, we so appreciate you coming to kick it with us. And as you know, did we lose her? We like to do something a little bit fun on our show, but we've learned to do it Kimberla style. Because we know Miss Kim is not for play. Let me tell y'all, she play with us because she loves us. But Miss Kim is not for play. Go ahead, Dee.
Sorry.
I appreciate that.
I learned my lesson. Well, my fun question for you is, I used it last time. You remember those big box of crayons that we used to get as a kid, and we had every color under the rainbow? Now, I'm looking at you and thinking of one color, but what color would you describe yourself? You can even combine some. What color would you be and why?
So my brand colors are black, white, and hot pink. Fuchsia, we could say fuchsia, hot pink, however. But yeah, those are my brand colors. Black, because I just absolutely love the color black under all circumstances. And so my closet, as much as some people don't understand that, is filled with that quite a bit, whether we're talking casual clothes, workout clothes, dress clothes, shoes, boots, the list just sort of goes on and on. But I love black because black has a certain level of classiness to it. To me, it's a very classic color. So I think that's why I like that. White, I just like white because white goes with absolutely everything. And so I love that. And then hot pink, I love that because it's just a beautiful, vibrant color that mixes well with the classic black and with the white that, again, goes with everything. So.
I love it. And I got a special question for you. So you've been chosen to write an anthology, and you can have 4 authors in it that are alive. Who would you want to be in it and why?
Wow. Yeah, that's very different. And that's kind of a hard one for me. It's something I've never, ever thought about because I'm not even sure if you know, but I've never, ever done a collaboration or an anthology. I've never, even when I've been asked, I've said no. There was one author who we were in the works to do a book together, and we outlined the story and everything. And that was Elin Harris. But unfortunately, he passed away. He was just a great friend of mine. He was one of the most genuine people and the kindest people that I've ever met in my life. And so he always wanted us to do a book together. But other than that, I've never really thought about it so much. That's a tough one.
Well, you know what? You can do collab with me and Lissha. How's that?
Okay, yeah, that works. So what about that?
Listen, I got 2 books that Toni keep fussing at me about, so I don't know. We so appreciate you coming to kick it with us, Miss Tim. We want you to shout out all of your social media where everybody can get your books and any events, virtual events that you have coming up in the future that people can watch.
So yeah, absolutely. I have the Baltimore Book Festival. Actually, it's the Baltimore Public Library, though. It's not the actual festival. I'm sorry. And I'm just looking at my date. It's actually next week, and I believe it is Tuesday, but I just want to confirm. Next Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern, I'm doing a virtual event with the Baltimore Public Library. And so if you go to their site, you can actually register for that. So I'll be on for about an hour with them. And so I have some other events coming up that I'll post on my website. And my website is actually www.kimroby.com, facebook.com, Kimberla Lawson Roby, Twitter is Kimberla L. Roby, and Instagram is Kimberla Lawson Roby.
That's that consistency in branding. We love it. We love it. Well, Miss Kim, you are always welcome here on Let's Chat. Anytime. We appreciate you taking your time, sharing your space and your energy with us. We appreciate you, and we will talk to you soon.
Thank you so much. I love you both, Lissha and Toni. Please keep doing what you're doing. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Love you back.
Okay. All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Have a good day. She's so awesome. Yes, she is so awesome. Thank you guys for tuning in. We have one more guest. We're going to take a brief break, and we will be right back.
Okay.